back again to talk about my least favorite books of 2025. And I think it'll be very interesting to look at kind of the patterns in these books and why I didn't like them, because I think there are some distinct patterns. There are only 9, so I didn't even make it to 10 least favorite books out of all of these. So I'd say that's pretty good. I'd say that's a pretty good track record. Also, I would just like to call attention to the fact that I have put up the 2nd star. Doesn't it look great? I think it's really cute for the backdrop of a video. It looks good. We don't have a little dangling light bulb like I'm being interrogated or anything. I also might at some point draw from my laptop that I have pulled up over here, because when I was remembering what I didn't like, I had taken notes on some of them about like what I didn't like about them, and then also there were parts of like reviews that I posted on Goodreads that I just thought were really funny. It would just be best to refer to those notes. So I will probably pull out the laptop at some point. I didn't rank them. I don't know if it's that helpful to rank your least favorite book. I just didn't like all of them, you know? The first book I'm going to talk about, not necessarily my least favorite of all time, but like just one that I found wildly unpleasant, was The Girl Who Played Go by Shan. This one is in my China 1930s video, I want to say. So you can go see my full spontaneous thoughts about that in that video. What I recall about deeply disliking about this book was I didn't learn that much about Go, and I thought I would, because it's called The Girl Who Played Go. I didn't see any reason for the relationship between the 2 main characters to be as meaningful as it was. It didn't feel meaningful to me, but it was treated like it was very meaningful. I thought that the prose was really flat, and there's a bizarre reveal that it turns out that the Chinese girl, the girl who played Go, because it's a Japanese soldier and a Chinese girl, the Chinese girl's friends, it turns out, had all joined the resistance without telling her. It didn't explain like why they didn't tell her. And then they all get caught and executed. Oh, are you guys, should I say, it's just going to be full of spoilers. I don't care. Like, if that bothers you, then you should go look at my favorites. You should go look at some good books. So then all of her friends get executed for being part of the anti-Japanese resistance. And it doesn't explain why they didn't invite her. She didn't seem like she was pro-Japan. I just thought like her reactions to it were really shallow and confusing. This whole thing was just shallow. I thought that like people's reactions to things didn't seem very human to me, and I just didn't have a good time with it. The next one I'm going to talk about is Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. I was on a quest in 2025 to find very like space opera, like spooky horror kind of stories. And this was one that seemed really promising. The premise of spaceship finds abandoned cruise spaceship and boards it to salvage it and make a ton of money and discovers a whole bunch of corpses inside. That premise is the best part of the entire story. The rest of it is an absolute travesty. It is a disaster. Every single character is absolutely insufferable, like super annoying and very dumb. Like very dumb. Like including the main character who like narrates the whole thing, just like super annoying and makes really irritating decisions. So there's this whole premise. Like they're like, "Ooh, this haunted ship, we should board it so we can salvage it and make all this money." And then they board the ship, and then like nothing happens. Nothing. It's just them being like, "I wonder what happened. I wonder what happened in this ship. What could have happened?" for like pages and pages and pages. And like at the very end, then some stuff happens, and then there's the reveal. This is always so tricky when pretty much the whole premise of the story is, but what happened? We want to know what happened. Because then, like, what happened had better be really good, right? It better be really good. Spoilers, it turns out that there weren't any ghosts. That was all just kind of like a trick because of vibrations in the ship. There's a whole reason for like why the vibrations are there, but basically there's this device in the ship that's causing these vibrations that are making everyone go insane. There are no ghosts. That's boring to me. What do you mean the twist is that there isn't anything cool? What? The twist is that the ghost ship doesn't have any ghosts in it? That's the twist? I came here for ghosts, and the twist is that I don't get any ghosts? That has something in common with the next book I'm going to talk about of like, oh, it turns out that like all of it was more boring than we thought. It was already boring, and guess what? The big reveal is it's more boring now. Really bizarre pacing of like really cool setup, nothing for the majority of the book, and then like really hurried ending that explains everything. Hate that. Hate it. Everything that has to do with it. The next book is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. This one, it is written like a fairy tale, very beautiful prose. which I like. And I love like a fairy tale kind of style. I think that's super fun. But in this case, I felt like the fairy tale style kept me very removed from the characters. Like I could never quite connect with them because the story was being told from such a distance, like a fairy tale would. Like when I'm reading the original Little Mermaid or something, it's kind of this removed style of like telling you like something that happened off in the distance, and you don't really like get into the psyche and emotions of the characters as much. And that's just kind of like the nature of like a traditional fairy tale. And so that's kind of what this did. But it just made, since it's also a contemporary novel, just made me care less about the characters. There are a few different twists in this story. One I thought was good, but I saw it coming from a mile away. They were implying it for like chapters and chapters on end, and I was like, oh, so then this must be going on. And it's like, and it turns out this is what's going on. It's like, oh, really? I couldn't guess. And then there's another twist, which is very similar to Dead Silence, where it turns out the whole book we thought that there was magic happening, and it turns out that all the magic is a hoax. Why would you take away the magic in your story when like the whole thing is like predicated on it being really magical? I could see a scenario where this would work. I could see an interesting story where you believe that there's magic going on and it turns out it's all hoax. But there was just something about it that was very disappointing to me, like very disappointing. And then at the very end, this is something that I'll bring up later in other books that I didn't like, is that a lot of things just happen to the main character and she's just reacting to these things happening. And I think the things that happened could have very easily been brought about because of her own personal choices rather than like forces outside of her control. And that would have been more interesting. It would have been more interesting to watch her make those choices rather than her just reacting to other people doing stuff. I like seeing characters make their own choices. I think it reveals a lot about them. I think it's exciting. I think it's interesting. So I like an active character rather than a passive character. Obviously, there's exceptions to every rule. I'm sure that there are really interesting stories with passive characters in them. But in general, I prefer a very active hero. The fact that especially near the end, all this like pretty crazy, like, whoa, that's wild kind of stuff happened. But it was all stuff that was happening to the main character. And I think that the story could have been changed that like she was making those things happen herself through her choices. So that was less interesting to me. The next book that I hated in 2025 was Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. And here's the thing. Here's the thing about Mickey 7. I read it being like, oh, I've been intrigued by this book and the movie's coming out, so I gotta read it and then watch the movie. I hated the book. I loved the movie. I think the movie solved all of the problems that I had with the book. And this is the time when I pull out my laptop because I had taken notes about this that I didn't end up putting in a review. It's just a note that I titled Questions for Mickey 7. And these are just questions I would throw into this note as I was reading it. Why is there an entire religion around hating a hugely rare kind of person? So Mickey is a person who like has been like entirely scanned by a computer. They can like his brain has been uploaded to a computer and they completely scanned his body so that when he dies, they can just make a new body and upload a brain into it. And they can just do that every single time. There's an entire religion around hating that kind of person. But there's very few of this kind of person. It's very rare, very expensive. Nobody wants to be that way. Like, it's not ideal. And yet there's an entire religion around hating that kind of person. If everyone was so desperate to get on this colonizing mission that the organizers had their pick of the best for every position, why did they pick a commander who irrationally hated an essential member of the crew due to the irrational religion that everyone knew he was a part of? If an ocular implant, implant in your eye, is a technology that is surgically put into your body, which they establish, how does it regenerate every time Mickey revives, which is something that happens? I think that's just a plot hole. Why does the ship have such a low carrying capacity? They eliminate everyone's personal items to get rid of weight, and people have to sleep in hammocks in various rooms of the ship because there appear to be no bunk rooms. Why is it safe/feasible to use such a bare bones ship? Shouldn't they aim for a higher energy capacity before they even leave? How have they colonized so many planets with such bad technology and planning? Related to this, Mickey says he's sleeping in a hammock in a conference room. Like every day he just has to set up his hammock in like a different room because that's how everyone sleeps. But then suddenly he and Nasha are sleeping together in his rack, which sounds like a bunk. So do they have bunks or not? Is he sleeping in a conference room or is he sleeping in his rack? Why doesn't the dome, so like once they colonize the planet, they like set up the dome. Why doesn't the dome have any leisure areas? Mickey literally states that they don't have any, only workspaces. Do they want the whole crew to go crazy and kill each other? What do you mean a workout center is not standard equipment for a colony? Which is something that it says. Why does the author think that humans only need food, water, and sleep to survive? I just like to point out, even prisons have like exercise areas. And that's just like part of the setup of this colony dome. And I just think it's so stupid. So there's just all these inconsistencies that really bothered me in the whole story. But then the movie fixed all of that. So good for them. There is a part of the book that is not included in the movie that I think about all the time. It is an aside from Mickey's perspective. He's like, I remember this thing that happened. And then there's like an entire chapter of him describing this thing that happened on another planet. That was so fascinating. And I would almost recommend reading Mickey 7 just for that chapter, because I think that chapter on its own is just like amazing as a short story. It's about like basically an evil tech billionaire who goes to a planet that's been populated by other billionaires who like fled Earth in order to create their own utopias, but because they're also like individualistic and self-centered, they don't help each other on this planet, and so they have like very limited resources just taking care of themselves. And that's how like this new like evil, extra evil billionaire comes and like destroys them. And I think about it all the time. I think it is so interesting. So perhaps Edward Ashton is better as a short story author than like a whole novel author, because just with that little vignette of what happened on this other planet, it's really fascinating. But the whole story overall, there was so much that fell apart for me. The next book I want to talk about is Dragon Springs Road by Janie Chang. This has the same issue of the main character being very passive and just kind of reacting to things that happen to her, rather than her actively making interesting choices that help me understand more about her as a character and care more about the story. There are also magical elements that don't really go anywhere. They seem to be shoehorned in to like make it interesting, but then like they don't make much difference to a story. There's a magical fox spirit that doesn't really have much impact on the story. It's just there. And then I talk about this in one of my China videos as well when I review this book. The main character is given the option to become basically immortal, and she says no for what I thought were extremely boring reasons. I just wasn't excited by anything that happened at all. It was very, very dull. The next book, and I'm so sorry, this is a very controversial opinion. The next book that was one of my least favorites of the year was Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And here's the thing, I do love this author. Americana is one of my favorite books of all time. Absolutely loved that one. Seriously, like top 10 ever. So I do love this author. It's just that this book is about a civil war, which I was very interested in, but then a lot of the story is spent talking about people cheating on their spouses. We're learning about couples who are going through this war and like how they react to it and stuff, but they're also cheating on each other all the time. And I feel like most of the story was about that. It was about them cheating on each other. And I don't care about stories of affairs. I find them like both boring and insufferable. Didn't have a good time. Everything that wasn't an extramarital affair I thought was interesting, but the majority of the book was extramarital affairs. So I don't care. I don't care about you cheating on your spouse. Next book is She and Her Cat by Makoto Shinkai and Naruki Nagakawa, translated by Ginny, Tapley, Takemori. This one, so I'm working on a video where I read translated Japanese novels with cat in the title. There's a lot of them, and it's taken me a while to like gather them all from the library and like read them over time. So I do have my actual reaction in that video that perhaps will come out someday. But for now, what I'll talk about, first of all, again with a pattern of these books, really boring. I just thought like nothing happened, and there was nothing to hold my attention. But then also, it's all about how cats make an impact on their owners' lives. Then also, I thought that a lot of these owners' lives were like wildly unrealistic, but in boring ways. Like, for example, what I have my notes here. One woman is creative partners with her best friend. Her friend admits she has writer's block. So that woman tells her best friend to drop dead, and so her best friend dies of heart failure the next day. Why would you respond to your friend like that for like such an innocuous thing that like she's like struggling with? Like, she's not like doing this on purpose. You tell her to drop dead, and then the author decides then she does die. What are you? It's just so dumb. It's so soap opera and very silly. All of these different women in these different stories like adopt cats. But then when we get to the perspective of the cats, So it alternates between the perspective of these women and the perspective of their cats. The cats don't act like cats and don't think like cats. They kind of just think and act like tiny humans who are also like obsessed with humans. And that makes no sense to me. Like if I wanted to read stories about people, then I'd read stories about people, but this was supposed to be like from the perspective of cats. So like why do they just act like humans? Here are some lines I noted down that are said by cats, like in their inner monologue, like narration, like as when it's from their perspective. I was desperate to have Chobi's children, so I decided to try asking them outright, let's get married. This is a cat. This is a cat talking about, but I think she's talking about another cat. It never explains the concept of marriage in cat society. What? I don't understand that. So then the next one is a cat who's obsessed with his human owner. So a male cat says to a female cat, look, Mimi, how many times have I told you I have a girlfriend? He's talking about his human owner. He's talking about a human woman. Like, this could be funny, but like, it's completely unironic about it. They're like, no. Like, this cat refuses to mate with other cats. He is keeping himself pure for a human woman. And we're just supposed to like take that completely seriously. The dialogue is really clunky. I don't know how much of this is like the translation versus the writing, but like the dialogue is really clunky. All of the people are really shallow. There's never any description of like where they are. Like there's no description of pretty much anything. But like, it's really short, so I didn't have to deal with it for that long. A lot of these other books that I just described, I could imagine other people reading and liking. I don't understand the people who like this book in the slightest. Is that really mean? Is that really rude? Am I gonna start a fight? I was reading all of these reviews on Goodreads being like, this book is so cute. I loved hearing about these cats. These cats are so cute. I love reading about cats. And it's like, okay, but it's bad. I seriously, I could not find like a single redeeming quality about this book. I thought it was atrocious. Then the next book is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I think my last video should have been about me reading The Bone Season. I just thought it was extremely sloppy world building that didn't make any sense to me. And once again, very passive character that I thought was just reacting to things a lot, actually getting saved by other people. And I would have much rather like watched her make her own interesting choices. And so long, unlikable characters. Ugh. And then finally, the 9th book for me to talk about is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. Where do I even begin? This book is about a girl who is living in a society that is very violently misogynistic against women. Like, a lot of the story kind of centers around that. It seems to be trying to say something about misogyny and about sexual violence and things, but then it's very inconsistent. So we're supposed to believe that this is a very sexist society. Women are banned from being in the English program, which is the #1 like program at her like prestigious university. But they aren't banned from being in the architecture program. So she goes into that one instead of the English program, which is what she really wants to study. Architecture and English are nothing alike. So you're only studying architecture because it's #2 to English. You're not going to study something that's like maybe even a little bit related to English. Like, what about history? History is like a bit more related to English, I would say. But no, like, it's just because of rigor. Even though she's passionate about English, she's not passionate about academic rigor. So that doesn't make any sense. But then even though she's an architecture student, and she supposedly like wins a contest to go do some architecture for her favorite author, she never does any architecture the entire book. So like, why is she an architecture student at all? And then even though every single man she interacts with in this entire story is like a violent misogynist who is constantly hitting on her and making horrible comments about her as a woman and all these things, the love interest magically is like a perfect male feminist who like treats her really wonderfully. And this is never examined. Like, how is he so special that in this like horrible society where all men are awful, he's the only man who's not awful? And like, the story never questions this. How did this happen? There's also a lot of weird racial dynamics going on that are not examined at all. like the love interest is from a racial group that the main character's racial group hates, and so therefore at first she hates him basically because she's racist. But then, like, they fall in love, and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry that I was racist. And he's like, that's okay. What? This just is it's so shallow. This one also is very passive. So like, they're in this author's house where she's supposed to do architecture and is not doing architecture. So there's a bunch of mysteries about this author that they're trying to unravel. And instead of them doing any actual sleuthing or like investigating or anything, they'll kind of wonder, oh, I wonder what's up with this thing with this author. And then by sheer coincidence, they'll come across like a diary or a letter in the house that explains the thing about that author that they were just wondering about, which is both improbably and boring, right? Like, why am I reading this? The characters didn't make any sense. The story didn't make any sense. The world didn't make any sense. Nothing in the story made sense. And also wasn't very exciting. Like, just critical blow after critical blow. Like, 100% not into it. Not into it at all. So those are my least favorite books of 2025. What were your least favorite books and why? Do you agree with any of my reasonings for not liking books? Like, are you also the sort of person who will notice that sort of thing and hate that? Like, do you also hate overly passive main characters, twists that just overtly take away what you thought was interesting about the story, etc., etc.? Any other patterns that you notice and what you don't like about books? Let me know. And I will hopefully see you soon. Hopefully I'll make more videos. That'll be great. Wouldn't that be great if I made more videos? Yeah, I would like that. Okay, bye-bye.